When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Comics YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about Mace Tyrell and Olenna Tyrell. Now, the two characters are at very different places right now. Their plots are very different, but I thought it'd be good to group them together because I did want to talk about both of these characters, but I almost felt like an individual video for either one would be quite short, given we don't have a lot of information about them at this time, and so it's kind of hard to speculate on them, and so it would have been a very short video. So I decided to kind of group the two together and kind of just talk about the Tyrell plot as a whole. As I'm not really talking about, Marjorie or any of the other Tyrells, I kind of wanted to loop them together to kind of talk about this plot line a little bit. And I think it made a lot of sense as we're going to be leading into a Jon Con video in day 10 of the 25 Days of Winds of Winter. I thought this would be a good lead into it. So if you guys remember, what we get in the Winds of Winter sample chapter with Arianne 2 is that Mace Tyrell is moving an army to confront Jon Connington at Storm's End. He's apparently already taken the castle from what we're told by Halden the Half-Maester, and at this time Arianne is being sent to talk or negotiate with Jon Con and young Griff. But there is, it appears, going to be a battle against Mace Tyrell and the Reach's forces, with young Griff leading the charge. So where does that leave a character like Mace Tyrell? Now, it's interesting because some of this timeline seems to me missing. At the end of A Dance with Dragons, Mace Tyrell is currently in King's Landing awaiting the innocence or the proven innocence of Marjorie Tyrell, his daughter, and that she is going to be basically freed and reinstalled kind of as queen and all those things. And so his force in King's Landing is more of a threat force. It's more of a, okay, if you dare name her guilty, Mace Tyrell is going to bring hell upon the High Sparrow. And for the High Sparrow, you got to look at the Tyrells. They're very beloved in King's Landing because, again, they fed them. They were the ones that came with the Battle of the Blackwater to quote-unquote save them, all those type of things. And so Mace Tyrell now, in this Winds of Winter sample chapter, we seem to have missed a lot of that plot line. So what kind of happened in that area? And so if Mace Tyrell left King's Landing, you'd have to assume Marjorie was found innocent, all those things, and he's now marching with an army to Storm's End. So what occurs in this battle? Because as we see in the Winds of Winter sample chapter, Daemon, Sand, and Arianne kind of discuss this coming battle, and they kind of discuss this point of, okay, if Jon Connington is willing to meet Mace Tyrell in battle, it would assume that he thinks he can win. Now, it is Mace Tyrell. Mace Tyrell is not the best general. All of the real battles he's ever actually won have been accredited to other people, like, for instance, Randall Tarley. Or if you want to think about the Battle of the Blackwater, that's more accredited to people like Tywin and maybe even Mace Tyrell's sons, not necessarily him. So Mace Tyrell, as a leader, not the most imposing figure or somebody to fear, but still, the Tyrell forces have more men than the Golden Company. At this time, the support that Jon Connington does have is growing, yes. We hear a little bit about that as Arianne is making her way to Jon Connington. But at this time, Jon Connington, it would be dumb, it would appear, given the numbers game, to meet Mace Tyrell in open battle. But this is where I think that there is a difference. I think personally that Jon Connington has some allies with the Reach. This is made known through when we hear some of the stuff with the Golden Company in terms of Jon Connington 1 and 2 in A Dance with Dragons. And so I think that personally what's going to happen is we are going to see a battle. I've kind of been back and forth on this in the past. If we're just going to see Mace Tyrell kind of just not have this big battle, kind of do what he does in the past, where he sits out the war, really. He lets Jon Connington and young Griff go to King's Landing to see who's going to win, and then he takes the winning side. I actually don't think that's the case now, because one thing is very apparent. Mace Tyrell has a lot to lose if Marjorie and the Lannisters were to lose this war. Because at this time, Jon Connington wants to save young Griff for Daenerys. That seems to be the plan. I personally don't think that plan is going to work. I think that Arianne, based upon everything we've seen in these Winds of Winter sample chapters, Feast for Crows, A Dance with Dragons, she's somebody that's able to manipulate men very easily. And I think that she is going to be the person that's going to be placed as young Griff's partner or wife. And so I think there's a lot for Mace Tyrell to lose. And so what I also think is what I also find apparent is that John Connington and young Griff seem like they are preparing for a battle, not for Mace Tyrell to sit things out. I think personally what's going to occur is we're going to see some of the Reach forces switch over to young Griff's side. And I think this is true for a number of reasons. One, you have to remember the Reach and the Tyrells were quite loyal to the Targaryens all the way up until the end of the war. So a lot of those houses might feel more sympathetic towards the Targaryens. But another part of this is Mace Tyrell does not have, I feel like, the best reputation amongst a lot of the lords of the Reach. You think about Randyll Tarly. He has constantly been slighted by Mace Tyrell. Whether it's we're taking a look at this, battle that Robert Baratheon loses in the war, which was headed by Randyll Tarly, that all went to Mace Tyrell. Like the credit publicly all went to him. And so you think about that, that's been one slight. Other slights have been the mishandlings of Mace Tyrell and how I think Randyll Tarly is somebody that would probably view himself as being higher up. Also, you look at Brightwater Keep, the castle of the Florence. That's something that went to Mace's own son. That's something that I think the Tarleys thought that they had a better claim to. And it kind of parallels the first Blackfire Rebellion. You have a number of houses in the Reach that would have reason to go with a Blackfire, pretender, whatever you want to say, right? And so when you think about the first Blackfire Rebellion, the story was all about how the major houses didn't really, declare until the very end, or some of them did anyway, with the Baratheons and the Dornish. And you had a lot of minor houses, like your second or your third major power in these different areas, going for the Blackfires, trying to gain more power. And so what I think we'll see is a battle where Mace Tyrell is betrayed. He already has, again, a formidable opponent with John Connington, young Griff, the Golden Company, some of the support of the Stormlands against, and then I think also the things that'll go against him is the Peaks at this time, whatever power that they still have. It's still made kind of unclear what their power level is. And in the terms of like the Blackfire time, they were much more powerful, but after a number of different rebellions, who knows how powerful they still are. But again, after a number of Blackfire rebellions were squashed, and also you think about the Peak Rebellion in it of itself, where Maekar Targaryen was killed. Who knows how much power they still have, but still a very formidable house, I would assume. You also have, I think, the Tarleys who are going to also betray them. Possibly other houses could also betray them. So yeah, I think Mace Tyrell actually probably dies in this battle, or is at least taken prisoner. And the battle for Steel is what it's kind of being called in the community. And so that's where I think Mace Tyrell ends up. I think he is somebody that is not going to really be in charge. He isn't really in charge of House Tyrell. It is Olenna, but I think he is going to be somebody that is going to be walking into basically a trap. Now, Olenna, on the other hand, so Olenna at this time, we haven't, heard much from her since around like midway through Feast for Crows, as she goes back to Highgarden. We haven't heard much from her. And so I don't think we'll hear much of her really until Daenerys comes over. I think Olenna will back more than likely Daenerys. Because when you think about what's going to happen, if Mace Tyrell is defeated by young Griff, obviously Olenna is not going to go with young Griff. Because the Tyrell power right now is linked to the Lannisters, and also her son would have just been killed by young Griff. I think Olenna would be probably pretty smart, stay out of these, wars going on. You also have the threat of Euron right now, which is, I would say, much more of a present threat than right now young Griff, because young Griff and John Connington are not looking to take Highgarden. They're looking to take King's Landing at this time, after this battle with Mace Tyrell. So I don't think Olenna will be involved with that plot line, and I'm not even sure how much we'll actually see of Olenna, given the fact that we don't have any POVs at Highgarden. The only way we would maybe see her would be like through, Samwell, possibly, but I don't think that's going to occur either. And so I think what we see with the outcome for Olenna is, I think she's going to side with Daenerys like she does in the show. It still would make a lot of sense. Daenerys is somebody that would come over with the dragons with a lot of power. It would be somebody that she could back to try and get, vengeance on young Griff and all those types of things. And who knows, by the time that Daenerys comes over, the Tyrells could be in a really bad spot, right? Marjorie could be killed, whether that's by Cersei, whether that's by this John Connington-led force, where maybe they take her captive or something like that because of the Tyrells going against them and all of those things, the Tarleys, or maybe the Peaks wanting to take over Highgarden, any of those ideas. Loras Tyrell himself is in a bad condition, we're told. There is reasonable doubt to assume that maybe that isn't exactly the truth, but either way, if Marjorie's in trouble, you would assume Loras is going to come to her aid, and that could also lead to his death. Willis, who is also at Highgarden with Olenna, he is a cripple, so I do think that there's a chance that he could live through this story because he's not going to be in any battles or anything. I think if he dies, it's going to be almost kind of similar to Olenna, where it's like their castle is maybe taken and they're put to the sword. Maybe that is by somebody. I just don't see something like Jaime Lannister and the Lannister forces taking them out. I just don't see that really happening, right? Because Jaime Lannister just is not at that part of the story, and even if he was to be back with Cersei's camp, they're not going to have really a lot of support at this time if she's able to flee back to Casterly Rock. Maybe with that's with the Western Army. Who knows? I just don't think that's going to be the way that it's going to possibly go down. If anything, maybe it would be Young Griff's faction more than it would be any other faction. I don't know, right? I think Olenna is a tough character to predict, and even Willis as a whole. I thought that there's a chance that Willis survives throughout the story, because when would he die? I mean, the only way he would die would be maybe if he is with Daenerys and maybe he does something bad, or maybe something happens to where Young Griff's faction is able to kill him somehow. Very hard to predict that character. Olenna and, to me, Willis are very hard to predict in terms of their death or if they're going to survive, because they are very sideline characters in terms of in the middle of battles or wars. They're not going to be people that are going to be getting killed or in danger, like characters like Jon Connington, a character like Mace Tyrell, or even at King's Landing. If Olenna does go to King's Landing, that's a really bad look for her, but I don't think that's going to occur. So I think the late game is Olenna goes with Daenerys like in the show, but I think the way that she goes out could be very different. I'm trying to figure out a way, because one of the best parts of season 7 was Olenna's death. And so I wonder if George had kind of told D&D about that. But where would you find a situation where you have Daenerys, who has come over, Young Griff's on the throne, you have maybe Cersei in the Westerlands, maybe that's with Jaime, maybe not, and you have the Westerland army getting all the way to Highgarden, not interacting with any of these other forces, and going for Olenna. It just feels like that doesn't make a lot of sense, given Cersei's motivation, it would appear, right? Because if anything, the Tyrells at that time, I mean, they lost a battle fighting for you at the Battle of Steel, more than likely. It wasn't like the Tyrells were the reason or the person that she should be the most angry at presently. Now, yes, she is going to not like the Tyrells because she's probably going to believe Varys, what Varys set up for Kevin Lannister at the end of A Dance with Dragons, that they killed Kevin. But you would think if Young Griff is the person supplanting her and taking her crown, and you have Arianne Martell, a Dornish, possibly with the other Sand Snakes killing Tommen and Myrcella or being involved with that, plus Daenerys coming over with her dragons in the north, I just find that, where do we get to this situation where the Lannisters, their main goal is taking out Highgarden? I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing it clearly, but let me know what you guys think about Olenna and Mace. Very difficult characters to predict. I think the whole Tyrell family really is very difficult to predict, outside of maybe characters more or less that are at King's Landing. I think characters at King's Landing are kind of doomed, in my opinion, but yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Bye, guys.